You've heard the hype, right? That AI is going to solve all our biggest problems, maybe even climate change. But what if that whole promise of a green AI is just hiding a much bigger, much messier truth? So let's really dig in.
And look, the story they sell us is pretty compelling. We see these images of a clean, super efficient future all powered by these brilliant systems that are going to optimize everything. It's a beautiful picture, for sure. But, like a mirage you see in the desert, is this vision of a sustainable AI just an illusion? What happens when we get closer? Does the reality turn out to be something else entirely?
To figure this out, we've got to start by pulling apart the big claims these companies are making about efficiency, because it's right there in the numbers themselves that the mirage really begins.
In this slide, man, it just nails the central problem. On one hand, yeah, the claims are technically true. Individual AI models are getting more efficient. But on the other hand, we're using them at this absolutely explosive exponential scale. It's kind of like inventing a car that gets better gas mileage, but then putting a billion more of them on the road. The individual gains just get totally swamped by the sheer volume of it all.
Okay, so if we can't trust that one little efficiency number, we've got to zoom out. We need to look way beyond a single AI prompt to understand the real cost. We have to uncover the whole footprint.
So let's start with a number you've probably seen thrown around. Google made a point of saying that a single text prompt on its Gemini model uses a tiny 0.24 watt-hours of energy. And on the surface, that sounds amazing, right? Incredibly efficient.
I mean, to put that in perspective, it's the same amount of power your TV uses in just 9 seconds. Pretty impressive. It's so easy to see that number and think, okay, great, problem solved. But, and this is the most important question we can ask, what is that tiny number not telling us? Because it turns out it's leaving out, well, almost everything.
Let's start with water. That little 9-second calculation doesn't include any of the resources it took to train the model in the first place. Get this, training just one model, ChatGPT-3, is estimated to have used a mind-boggling 700,000 liters of fresh water. That's just a staggering amount, completely hidden from that per-prompt metric. And this chart really drives the point home. The energy demand from data centers, the places that power all this AI, it's projected to nearly double by 2030. Any tiny efficiency gains are just getting dwarfed by this massive surge in overall consumption. The problem isn't shrinking, it's exploding. Which brings us to the physical stuff. We see a clean, simple logo on our screen, but behind that is a massive industrial machine. You've got all the carbon it took to make the GPUs and the servers and the buildings. And with companies upgrading their hardware so fast, there's a literal mountain of electronic waste piling up. This rabbit hole goes way deeper than just energy and water. To really see the full picture, we have to look at the hidden human cost, and an ESG framework is a pretty good way to do that. You might have heard of ESG. It stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. It's basically a way to look at the whole picture, to see all the interconnected costs. We've touched on the environmental, but the social and governance parts are just as critical.
So that S for social, that's where we start talking about the people. The actual human beings in the supply chain who do things like annotate data or moderate content, and the communities that are impacted when a massive data center gets built in their backyard.
And some of what you find, it's pretty grim. There have been reports detailing how data workers in Kenya, who are doing the really essential work of cleaning up data for AI systems, are sometimes getting paid as little as $2 an hour. This really brings that hidden exploitation into the light. And here's the thing, this problem isn't spread out evenly across the globe. Not even close. When you actually look at the map, you see these challenges are just massively amplified in the global south, and it's creating a really dangerous divide. Just look at this table. It lays out the reality in really stark terms. In India, you've got a coal-heavy grid that's already stretched to its limits, and data centers are being built in places with high water stress. In Southeast Asia, you've got grids that rely heavily on fossil fuels. And across Latin America and Africa, unstable power grids often mean relying on diesel generators, all while land and water conflicts are popping up.
So when you step back and look at the big picture, a really troubling pattern starts to emerge. The Global South is providing the labor and the resources, but they're also bearing the worst of the environmental and social fallout. And this huge imbalance, it risks creating a new kind of digital colonialism.
Okay, so seeing the full picture is, it's pretty sobering.
But here's the crucial question. How do we get past all the empty promises and build real, enforceable sustainability? The whole conversation has to shift from vague pledges to actual verifiable proof.
But the good news is there are some pretty clear ways to tackle this. There are basically three main levers we can pull. First, financial pressure from investors and insurers. Second, smart, tough policy and regulation. And third, collaborative action, especially among the nations of the Global South.
And we're not just talking about vague ideas here. We're talking about specific, powerful policies. Imagine if all major AI companies had to publicly disclose their energy, water, and e-waste data. Think about permits for new data centers that are based on performance, like the strict standards they have in Singapore, and enforcing actual living wages for data workers, all verified by independent auditors.
At the end of the day, the goal is simple, but it's also a total game changer. To move the entire industry away from just making vague promises about being green to being held truly accountable with real, verifiable metrics that we can all see.
Which brings us to one last, really provocative question. It's a question for regulators, for investors, and honestly, for all of us. If a company can't, or just won't, publish its true, audited, full life cycle impact, should it even have the social license to grow? Definitely something to think about.